Imagine a world where kindness alone doesn't keep you safe, where having good intentions doesn't guarantee good outcomes. That's the world Niccolò Machiavelli understood, and that's the world we still live in. Even if you've never opened The Prince, you've probably heard Machiavelli's name whispered alongside words like manipulative, ruthless, or cold. But here's what most people miss. Machiavelli wasn't just teaching rulers how to scheme, he was teaching all of us how to survive. His real genius wasn't in glorifying cruelty. It was in exposing how power actually works when nobody's pretending to be noble. Written in 1513, The Prince is less of a how-to for tyrants and more of a mirror. It reflects a truth many don't want to face, that the world isn't fair, people aren't always good, and if you want to thrive, you can't afford to be naive. Machiavelli wasn't trying to corrupt people. He was trying to wake them up. He lived through chaos. Renaissance Italy wasn't some polished museum piece. It was a fractured chessboard of city-states like Florence, Venice, and Milan, all backstabbing each other, while foreign superpowers like France and Spain circled like wolves. Florence, Machiavelli's home, swung like a pendulum between Republican ideals and elite families like the Medici, who saw morality as optional and power as essential. Machiavelli spent years serving the Florentine Republic. He was a diplomat. He rubbed shoulders with kings, princes, and mercenaries. He saw how the game was really played. Then, when the Medici returned to power, he was stripped of his position, imprisoned, even tortured. Just like that, cast out, discarded. But instead of fading away, he wrote The Prince. Not from a place of bitterness, from a place of brutal clarity. Some say he wrote it to earn his way back into the Medici's favor. Others believe it was his final act of rebellion, offering a survival guide that exposed the game for what it really was. Either way, The Prince isn't just about ruling others. It's about understanding them. It's about leadership, resilience, and making decisions in a world that rarely rewards purity. Here's the thing, Machiavelli never said kindness was useless. He just knew it had to be paired with realism. A kind leader who ignores the dark side of human nature is a target, not a saint. Likewise, a ruthless leader with no integrity burns everything around them. Success, Machiavelli argued, lies in knowing both light and shadow and choosing your moment. And that's why his work still matters. Because even if we're not dealing with 16th century power struggles, we're still navigating boardrooms, social media, career moves, relationships, all arenas where perception, strategy, and timing matter more than anyone wants to admit. So today, we're going to look at 5 of Machiavelli's most important lessons. Lessons that apply whether you're leading a company, managing a team, building a brand, or just trying to stay grounded in a chaotic world. These aren't shortcuts, they're lenses. Each one helps you see yourself and others more clearly, not with fear, but with awareness. If that sounds dark to you, good. Because part of growing up is realizing life is complicated, people are contradictory, and the world doesn't pause to explain itself. And the first thing Machiavelli wants you to understand is this: human nature is dual. You've probably heard that people are either good or bad kind, or cruel, honest, or deceptive. Machiavelli would have laughed at that. He knew people are both, often at the same time. In The Prince, he wrote, "Men are ungrateful, fickle, false, cowardly, and covetous." Not because he hated humanity, but because he observed it up close. He also saw our capacity for loyalty, courage, and sacrifice. But he warned, don't bet everything on people doing the right thing. Bet on people doing what benefits them unless they've proven otherwise. That may sound cynical, but really it's freeing. Because when you accept that human nature includes both light and dark, you stop expecting perfection. You start managing expectations. You prepare for betrayal without becoming paranoid. You look for virtue, but you verify it. And this duality isn't just Machiavelli's idea. Modern psychology backs it up. Research into something called self-complexity theory shows that the healthiest people are the ones who can hold seemingly opposite traits, strength and vulnerability, ambition and compassion, without breaking apart. You don't have to be one thing. You just have to be real about the mix. Think about any classic story where a character transforms under pressure. Take Heathcliff from Wuthering Heights. He starts as a wounded romantic figure. Then betrayal twists him into something darker. Was he always cruel, or did circumstances bring out what was already inside? That's Machiavelli's point: context matters. Environment reveals character, and unless we understand this, we'll keep getting blindsided by people who smile while setting the trap. Now let's bring it into everyday life. You trust a friend with sensitive information, they use it against you. You hire someone with a great resume, they vanish under pressure. You assume your kindness will earn loyalty, it earns convenience. Not because you're a fool, but because you didn't account for the dual nature of people. And that's what this lesson is really about. Not giving up on humanity, but removing the blindfold. It also works in reverse. When you see your own flaws, the parts of you that want revenge, that crave validation, that fear rejection, you're not broken. You're human. Machiavelli would say, use that awareness. Don't hide from it. Let it make you smarter. So when you lead, whether it's a company, a team, or just yourself, don't be shocked when people disappoint you. Don't be surprised when loyalty has a price. Expect the duality. Prepare for it. And more importantly, understand it in yourself. Because here's the hard truth Machiavelli knew. People will not always meet you at your highest self. Sometimes they'll drag you into their lowest. The goal is not to become cynical. The goal is to become conscious. And with that, we can move to lesson 2. Perception is power, a lesson even more relevant today than it was 500 years ago. Lesson 2, perception is power. Machiavelli once wrote, "Men judge more by the eye than by the hand, because everyone can see you, but few can touch you." Translation: most people won't dig deep into your character or actions, they'll judge you by what's visible. And in today's world, where attention spans are short and impressions are instant, this truth isn't just relevant, it's critical. Let's be honest, we live in the age of optics. In politics, business, and even dating, how you're seen often matters more than who you are. We'd like to think substance wins. But in a crowded world, perception is the gatekeeper. People don't have time to get to know the real you. They go off the trailer, not the full movie. And Machiavelli wasn't celebrating this. He was warning us, if you don't take control of your image, someone else will. Take Abraham Lincoln, a leader who understood this better than most. During one of the most divisive periods in American history, Lincoln was mocked, doubted, even hated. But he carefully crafted his public image as a thoughtful, moral, steady hand. He spoke with calm conviction. He dressed plainly. He projected honesty. His leadership didn't just rest on policies, it rested on perception. Fast forward to today, social media has amplified this dynamic tenfold. People build entire careers based on aesthetic. Online, you can be whoever you present yourself to be. And while some call it fake, others call it branding. Now, Machiavelli wouldn't have cared much for our Instagram filters, but he absolutely would have respected the strategy. Because in his view, perception is leverage. It's how you protect your value, control the narrative, and sometimes survive. But here's where it gets tricky. There's a difference between shaping perception and living a lie. Machiavelli wasn't telling you to become someone you're not. He was telling you to make sure the strongest version of you is the one people see. If you're generous but always downplay it, people won't recognize your kindness. If you're strategic but look unprepared, no one will trust your decisions. Image doesn't replace substance, it introduces it. Let's take this into modern life. In a job interview, for example, perception starts before you speak. Your posture, clothing, tone, all of that sets the stage. If you undersell yourself or come off uncertain, people assume you lack confidence, even if your resume is golden. If you overcompensate, they assume arrogance. Either way, the truth of who you are gets filtered through how you appear. Or think about relationships. If someone always sees you being agreeable, they may assume you're a pushover even if you're not. If you avoid conflict, they may think you have no boundaries even if you're simply trying to keep the peace. People don't see your intentions, they see your patterns. This is why Machiavelli's advice is so valuable. It teaches self-awareness, not self-deception. He understood that public image, if left unchecked, can become a liability. A leader who ignores perception may lose credibility. A professional who dismisses reputation may struggle to build trust. And a person who refuses to manage how they're seen can be misunderstood, overlooked, or underestimated. That's not fair, but it's true. And if you think this only applies to CEOs or politicians, think again. Every email you send, every conversation you enter, every digital footprint you leave, it all contributes to your narrative. So what do you do? First, be intentional. Understand how others see you. Not obsessively, but realistically. Ask yourself, is the image I'm projecting aligned with my goals? Or is it working against me? Second, don't be afraid to showcase your strengths. That's not bragging, it's clarity. Machiavelli would argue that hiding your talents is not humility, it's poor strategy. Third, know your audience. What impresses one person might alienate another. Adapt your presentation without compromising your values. That's the sweet spot where perception meets authenticity. But let's make one thing clear. Machiavelli never said to be fake. In fact, he warned against that too, because fake people eventually get exposed. His point wasn't to manipulate, it was to be aware, to be deliberate, to make sure what people see is who you actually are, at your best. There's a modern myth that authenticity means showing everything, your flaws, your chaos, your every thought in real time. But Machiavelli would probably raise an eyebrow at that. He'd say no, authenticity means showing the right parts of you at the right time, in the right way. Why? Because even truth mishandled can backfire. A classic example. Imagine a manager who's brutally honest, constantly pointing out flaws in the name of keeping it real. They might think they're leading with integrity, but to the team, they just seem harsh or careless. The truth delivered without wisdom becomes a liability. Machiavelli would say, match your message to your moment. And this applies to leadership especially. A good leader doesn't just have the right values, they communicate them in ways that inspire trust. If your team doesn't know what you stand for, or if your image doesn't reflect your competence, you lose authority even if you're doing everything right behind the scenes. So where does that leave us? It leaves us with a question. Are you shaping your narrative, or letting the world write it for you? If you're not aware of your perception, you're playing the game with your eyes closed. Machiavelli's lesson is simple but powerful. You can't control everything, but you can control what people see. Use that wisely, not to deceive, but to align. Present the version of yourself that reflects your values, your strength, and your purpose. Because in a world of noise, perception is your first introduction, and sometimes your last defense. Which brings us to the third lesson, a natural progression from perception, adapt or fade. Lesson 3. Adapt or fade. There's a reason why Machiavelli's advice has survived for over 500 years. He didn't just teach about power. He taught about change, and nothing tests your ability to survive like change. He wrote, "He who adapts his conduct to the times will succeed, and likewise he who does not adapt will be undone by them." You don't need to be a prince to understand this. You just need to be alive in 2025. Think about how quickly the world shifts. Careers disappear. New platforms explode. Economies rise and crash. What worked 5 years ago might be useless today. If you cling to certainty, you drown in it. Machiavelli didn't see adaptability as a soft skill. He saw it as a survival mechanism. In Renaissance Italy, city-states like Florence were constantly under threat from foreign invaders, internal betrayal, even economic collapse. Leaders who refused to pivot fell fast. Those who observed the winds and changed their sails, they stayed afloat. Let's look at a familiar literary figure, Elizabeth Bennet from Pride and Prejudice. At first, she misjudges Mr. Darcy, stuck in her assumptions and wounded pride. But as the story unfolds, she doesn't just stubbornly hold her ground. She evolves, she reflects, she adapts. And by doing so, she changes her life and his. Adaptability isn't weakness, it's power in motion. And this applies far beyond fiction. In the real world, think of Charles Darwin. His theory of evolution isn't about the strongest species winning, it's about the most adaptable ones surviving. Darwin didn't just theorize this, he lived it. He faced backlash, skepticism, and scientific resistance. But he didn't dig in and fight blindly. He adjusted how he communicated, he reframed his message, and eventually he rewrote how we understand life. Machiavelli would have nodded in approval, and then he'd say, "Now you try it. Let's bring this into your world." Ask yourself, where are you resisting change out of fear or pride? Maybe you're holding on to an old strategy because it worked before. Maybe you're avoiding a new skill because it feels uncomfortable. Or maybe deep down, you're afraid that adapting means betraying who you are. But that's not what Machiavelli is saying. He's not telling you to abandon your values. He's telling you to match your strategy to your environment. Like a general who changes his tactics without changing his mission. or a musician who evolves their sound while staying true to their core. In business, the lesson is clear. Look at companies like Blockbuster, once a giant, now a cautionary tale. They refused to adapt to streaming. Netflix didn't. You know how that ended. Or take Kodak, they invented the digital camera, and then ignored it, fearing it would cannibalize their film business. That fear cost them everything. Adaptability is not a trend. It's a decision, a skill, a mindset. And here's the kicker: adaptability starts with humility. You can't change what you're not willing to admit is outdated. You can't evolve while pretending everything is fine. Machiavelli would call this situational clarity, the ability to see things as they are, not as you wish they were. It's one of the hardest and most powerful leadership traits. That doesn't mean panicking at every shift. It means staying aware, watching for the signals, adjusting early instead of reacting late. In today's fast-paced world, this applies to your career, your habits, even your beliefs. Because here's the truth. No one wants to admit sometimes the version of you that got you here isn't the one that can take you there. Machiavelli would say upgrade, and leaders, this lesson is non-negotiable. You're not just responsible for your own adaptation, you're responsible for guiding others through it. That means balancing consistency and vision with flexibility and execution. It means knowing when to hold the line and when to draw a new one. Imagine a captain steering through a storm. If they cling to the old course while the sea shifts beneath them, they sink. If they panic and lose the crew's trust, they still sink. The magic is in recalibrating calmly, confidently, and without ego. Machiavelli's genius is in reminding us that adaptability isn't reactive, it's strategic. It's not about changing who you are. It's about sharpening who you are so you can thrive where you are. And if that sounds exhausting, remember this change is coming whether you're ready or not, so you might as well meet it on your feet. Because if you don't bend with the times will break you. Which leads directly into Lesson 4, Respect Outlasts Love. It's one of Machiavelli's most controversial ideas, but it may also be his most misunderstood. Lesson 4, Respect Outlasts Love. Few lines from The Prince are quoted and misquoted as often as this one. It is better to be feared than loved if you cannot be both. That sentence has sparked debates for centuries, but if you stop at the surface, you miss the deeper wisdom underneath. Machiavelli wasn't saying love is worthless. He wasn't telling rulers to be cruel or leaders to terrorize their people. He was saying something more practical: love is fickle. Respect endures. Let's think about it. Love in leadership, in politics, even in friendship, often comes with conditions. People love you when you give them what they want, when you make their life easier, when you meet their expectations. But the moment you stop doing that, the love fades, it shifts. It disappears. Respect, on the other hand, is built on something stronger: integrity, competence, boundaries, leadership. These are not things people always like, but they remember them. They lean on them. Machiavelli recognized this, especially in times of crisis. A ruler who's only loved might be adored in peacetime, but abandoned when tough decisions arise. A respected leader, even if not adored, is followed, because people trust their judgment even when it stings. Let's step out of the Renaissance and into fiction. Aragorn from The Lord of the Rings isn't a king because people throw flowers at his feet. He's a leader because he earns respect through courage, sacrifice, and quiet strength. He doesn't manipulate people into loving him. He simply leads well, and that earns devotion. Or look at real-world leadership. Angela Merkel, former Chancellor of Germany, wasn't flashy. She wasn't driven by charisma or charm, but she was consistent. She led with calm, strategic clarity, even in global crises. People may not have loved her in the traditional sense, but they respected her deeply. And that's why her leadership endured. Now, does that mean you should go out of your way to be feared? No, Machiavelli actually warned against becoming hated. There's a line, and crossing it destroys everything. Being feared in Machiavelli's terms doesn't mean being cruel. It means being firm, predictable, disciplined. Someone people don't want to cross, not because you're dangerous, but because they know you won't bend. Think about parenting. A child who sees their parent as a friend might like them, but may also push limits. A child who respects their parent, who sees consistency, fairness, and strength, feels secure, not afraid, but grounded. In business, it's the same. Leaders who chase popularity often struggle with authority. They avoid conflict, delay decisions, say yes when they should say no, and eventually their teams lose trust. Because deep down, we respect leaders who are willing to do the hard thing even if it's not popular. Here's where Machiavelli's advice really hits home. Great leaders aren't always liked, but they are followed. This challenges the modern obsession with likability. In a culture obsessed with approval, likes, shares, praise, we sometimes forget that being respected isn't always comfortable. It involves setting boundaries, saying no, standing your ground when others fold. Respect is earned when people see that you mean what you say, that you act with integrity, that your actions line up with your values even when it costs you something. In relationships too, this lesson holds. You might want to be the nice one, the agreeable one. But if you never assert your needs, never enforce boundaries, people may love your presence, but take your absence for granted. Machiavelli would say, don't aim to be feared by the people you love, but don't let love replace self-respect either. Because once people lose respect for you, no amount of affection will restore the balance. You'll find yourself chasing approval instead of standing in your truth. That's the hard part of leadership and life. You will have moments when standing firm makes others uncomfortable, when saying what needs to be said earns you criticism, when doing what's right makes you unpopular. But in those moments, respect is your anchor. And remember, respect when earned through strength and wisdom often leads to deeper love. A quieter, more stable kind. The kind that doesn't fade when circumstances shift. Machiavelli's insight wasn't about choosing cruelty over kindness. It was about choosing lasting influence over fleeting affection. So the real question is, do you want to be liked for who people imagine you are, or respected for who you truly are? The leaders who leave legacies are the ones who chose the second. And now the final and perhaps most redemptive lesson: goodness and realism can coexist. Lesson 5. Goodness and realism can coexist. Let's clear something up right away. Machiavelli was not anti-goodness. He wasn't telling people to become cold-hearted manipulators. What he was saying is, this being good is not enough unless you understand when and how to use it. In his world, as in ours, being purely idealistic made you a target. People will exploit your kindness if you don't know when to protect it. People will twist your good intentions if you don't know how to ground them in strategy. So Machiavelli offered a different approach, a practical goodness, a kind of integrity that isn't blind to danger, a morality that isn't naive. He said, a wise man does not allow his goodness to be exploited. And that one sentence, it captures the tension we all wrestle with: how to be a good person in a world that doesn't always reward it. Let's look at a literary example: Atticus Finch from To Kill a Mockingbird. He's not just a moral man, he's a smart one. He defends an innocent man in a racially divided society. He speaks truth in a courtroom where truth isn't welcome. But he doesn't pretend that goodness alone will win the case. He sees the injustice. He knows the risks. He does what's right anyway, but with his eyes open. That's the kind of good Machiavelli respected. Or take someone like Richard Branson, founder of Virgin. He's known for treating his employees well, championing social responsibility, and valuing creativity. But he's also a savvy businessman. He takes risks. He makes hard calls. His ethical image is backed by strategic intelligence, not just goodwill. This is what Machiavelli believed in: virtue paired with vision, kindness that's aware of context, goodness that knows when to step back, when to act, and when to protect itself. Why does this matter so much today? Because a lot of people feel like they have to choose between being decent and being successful. They believe if they're honest, they'll be walked over. If they're generous, they'll be used. If they're soft-spoken, they'll be ignored. And in some ways, they're right if they lack boundaries. Machiavelli would say, keep your kindness, but don't wield it blindly. Ask yourself, is this gesture serving your values, or is it making you vulnerable to manipulation? Are you helping someone grow or enabling their behavior? Because true goodness isn't about never saying no. It's about knowing why you say yes. And here's something most people forget: even your values can be used against you if you don't guard them. Think about it. Have you ever stayed quiet to keep the peace and watched things get worse? Have you ever given second chances to people who weaponized your compassion? Have you ever stayed loyal to something that no longer deserved it? That's what Machiavelli was warning us about. Not to abandon goodness, but to protect it with wisdom. In leadership, this balance is crucial. The best leaders aren't the ones who say yes to everyone. They're the ones who make fair decisions even when those decisions are tough. They lead with empathy but not emotional chaos. They listen, but they also act. In personal life, it's the same. The kindest people are often those who have suffered the most because they know what it feels like to be hurt. But if they don't also learn boundaries, they'll carry everyone's burdens but their own. So here's what Machiavelli is really teaching. You don't have to harden your heart to survive. You just have to sharpen your awareness. You can care deeply and still say no. You can forgive and still move on. You can lead with love and still protect your mission. And if you do that consistently, you earn something even more powerful than admiration. You earn trust. Because the people who truly make a difference in this world are not the ones who shout the loudest or compromise the fastest. They are the ones who carry goodness like a sword, not a blindfold. That's the Machiavellian twist most people miss. So, if you're someone who values kindness but you're tired of being underestimated, remember this. You don't have to abandon who you are to win. You just have to strengthen who you are. And in that space between heart and strategy, you find the kind of success that doesn't cost your soul. Conclusion: the middle path. So what have we learned from this misunderstood Florentine? That leadership isn't about domination, it's about awareness. That morality isn't about perfection, it's about resilience. And that life isn't black and white. It's full of messy grays, sharp edges, and difficult choices. But that doesn't mean you stop being good. It means you get smarter about how you apply your goodness. Machiavelli's legacy endures because he dared to tell the truth that power is complicated, people are unpredictable, and survival requires more than sincerity. But buried inside his most controversial ideas is a consistent message: adapt, think strategically, know human nature, and lead with intention. That's not cynicism, that's clarity. And in a world flooded with noise, that clarity is power. So as you move through your own journey, whether you're leading, creating, parenting, building, or simply growing, remember this: you don't have to choose between being good and being strong. You just have to learn how to be both.